So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Christy Miller Hesed. I'm the research coordinator for the Grassland Synthesis Project at the North Central Climate Adaptation Science Center. And I think probably most of you are familiar, but in case anyone isn't, the North Central Climate Adaptation Science Center, or North Central CASC, is one of 9 regional CASCs. And these are partnerships between US Geological Survey and regional academic institutions. And they provide climate science and tools to support federal, state, and tribal natural resource managers. And so the North Central CASC is here in teal on the map and serves Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas. So again, welcome to all of you who are joining this listening session. We have 2 objectives today. The first is to share with you the outcomes of the NC CASC Grassland Synthesis Project. And also we want to share some outcomes from a listening session that we had last summer. And then I want to report back the results from the survey that we asked folks to complete prior to this session. And then our second objective is to get input on which of the identified information needs are most urgently needed for managing grasslands in a changing climate, and what format would be most helpful for us to share that information with you. So our agenda for this session reflects these objectives. I'm going to take the first 20 minutes or so to present the outcomes, and then we'll take 40 minutes for discussion in breakout groups, and use the last 30 minutes to regroup, report back, and preview some upcoming opportunities. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share some of the outcomes from our recent work on grasslands. This map here, you can see those north central states in robin's egg blue, and then the crosshatched region depicts the extent of the central grasslands. And since November of 2020, Heather Yoakum and I have been leading a grassland synthesis project to identify the research needs to support grassland management in a changing climate. And to identify and synthesize these grassland management goals, challenges, and information needs, we put together a management priorities working group, part of which is pictured here. And this group was composed of individuals knowledgeable of grassland management in federal, state, and tribal agencies, as well as NGOs across the region. So this group worked really hard to identify 300 grassland management related documents. This included plans, reports, summaries, and peer-reviewed literature that were authored by or relevant to grassland management organizations and agencies across the North Central region. And this working group systematically reviewed these documents until they reached inductive thematic saturation, which just means we weren't finding any new information. Altogether, 183 documents were systematically reviewed, and these represented various agencies, and these are shown on the x-axis of the figure. And they spanned various years. So the decade in which the greatest number of publications fall was between 2010 and 2019, which is shown in green. And then you'll also see that there's quite a few orange publications which were published in the year 2020 and 2021. One other notable thing on this figure is you'll see we were unable to identify documents to review from tribal nations. And so to address this, we worked closely with Shelby Ross, who's a graduate student at the University of Colorado Boulder, and also a member of the Oglala Sioux tribe. And we worked with Emily Boyd Valandra, a tribal resource manager and member of the Rosebud Sioux tribe. And they assisted us in incorporating general information about tribal grassland management goals and challenges across the region. And we also worked with James Rattlingleaf, who's also a member of the Rosebud Sioux tribe, and he facilitated introductions to members of other tribal nations who we consulted with for feedback. So by reviewing documents and through other consultations, the working group identified a total of 70 information needs broadly shared by grassland managers across the North Central region. And these 70 information needs generally fall into 15 main questions, which we have listed here and which we asked participants to rank on the survey that we sent out ahead of this session. Last summer, we shared these information needs with grassland managers in our joint stakeholder committee, which is a group that helps to inform the work of the NC CASC and also the USDA Northern Plains Climate Hub. And when we asked this group who they would want to talk to and about what in relation to climate change and grassland management, they indicated interest in engaging private landowners on climate adaptation, grassland conservation, and data and policies that would support both livelihoods and grassland health. And they also were interested in engaging with other grassland managers to be able to share successes and failures of adaptation actions implemented. And then there was also a lot of interest in engaging with multiple partners simultaneously. So bringing together managers, scientists, producers, and policymakers to identify ways to realize mutual benefits for grasslands and for communities. So we found this feedback to be really, really helpful. But we also wanted to get suggestions and feedback from a greater number of grassland managers across the region. So we sent out a survey ahead of this session, asking participants to rank the 15 high-level information needs that we identified through our synthesis project. And we had 21 responses to this survey so far. And I'm going to share the 5 highest ranked information needs. And you can see the average rank shown in parentheses. So the top 5 include how will climate change affect the disturbance regime, which includes fire and grazing? Where are grasslands most likely to be lost to other land uses? What novel ways of thinking are needed to successfully manage grasslands amidst climate change? How can conservation on private grasslands be achieved? And how will climate change impact woody encroachment? We also had an open-ended question on the survey that asked if there were additional information needs beyond what we asked the survey participants to rank. So we got a number of responses, and many of these connect to that full list of 70 information needs that our working group identified. But I want to summarize what some of these comments were. Some had to do with application. How do we apply climate change knowledge to the actual work of management? How to incentivize climate adaptation planning in public land management, given other existing demands on staff time. There was also 3 or 4 comments on the need for visualization or maps to show where species are expected to shift their range, where species will be most and least resilient to climate change. And then information is needed to know how to increase engagement with traditional ecological knowledge, tribes, and local communities in grassland restoration. And then a couple of respondents simply listed money or funding. And so a big question is how to fund this work. So looking ahead, the North Central CASC will have several things coming out of our grassland synthesis project. We are going to publish a report on the information needs of grassland managers. And the primary audience for this report will be researchers who wish to do work that is immediately relevant to grassland managers. We're also working on a second report, and this report synthesizes the existing science to see where we might already have answers to some of the identified information needs and where we have gaps, and so we need to direct more research. And this report is likely to be of greater interest to grassland managers. But we recognize grassland managers have a lot on their plates and are very busy. So we also want to develop some targeted 2-page summaries. And so are looking for input on what type of information would be most useful to include in those. And then in addition, a climate change and grasslands webinar series is being developed. And we would like to get input on what topics would be useful to cover. And I guess overall, we're wanting to make sure that the information we provide is not only relevant, but is presented in a way that makes it most easy for you to apply to your grassland management decisions. So I'm